Hey guys, it's Chris again, and we're up to step 2 in the positive personal change through higher consciousness model. And I hope you really did some great work with step 1, rattle the cage. Shake the door. It's about pain relief. And step 2 is cellular restructuring of your body. Now, I know we talk a lot about how many push-ups we can do and how many chin-ups, how fast we can run, and we talk a lot about diet, nutrition, cardio. We talk about HIIT training, high-intensity training. We talk about getting outdoors to do some stress relief, getting your heart rate up, etc., etc. But I think all of that is really old-fashioned approach to cellular well-being. It does not always address the real need of the body, which is to release toxin and to build the immunity of the human systems. So today I'd like to just talk to you about maybe during this time that you're in isolation, incubation, procrastination, deliberation, and thinking about your nation, you might like to think about health from a completely different angle and take a fresh look. Remembering, staying conscious doesn't always mean doing the same thing you've always done, but doing it at home. Staying conscious sometimes means to let go of what you've always done and do something new to address the same problems, but from a different angle. What is consciousness? Consciousness means getting more done in less time. In other words, staying fitter with less effort. It means being more effective and efficient in your training process and fitness process. Now, to do that, you always have to know what's the goal, what's the objective, what's the end point you're aiming for. In health, we must say it's the evolution of your DNA. It's the growth of your immune system, the development of your cellular structure of your body. This is what keeps you young. This is what keeps you energetic. Now, old language were words like revitalize, recovery, rejuvenate, stress clearing, energy, and empowerment. That's the old language we used to use pre-virus and unconscious. In a new language, when we're talking about cellular health, we're talking about we need to talk much more about detoxing, removing dead wood, which means lymph from your body, stiff joints where there's scar tissue. And we're talking about rebirthing of the cells. Remember, every 6 months your whole body is reborn. Every cell in your body is reborn every 6 months. We're talking about shaking the door and giving what I would call the doors of your cell, of the cells of your body, a chance to flush out and not store up the stuff that causes cancers and causes breakdown in aging. We need to restructure your body, and the important thing about exercise and rejuvenation and all the things we do are to restructure, to put order in the chaos. Now, your body goes into chaos in stress, anxiety, fear, anger, frustration. So there's many words, jealousy, envy. There are many words we can use to talk about your body going into chaos. And every now and again, we need to put the organizing principle that created the body, that heals the body, back into the body. And that is pure thought, which is unconditional love. So the moments of unconditional love in your body will give you the opportunity to be far more healthy and far more, let's say, sustainable in your health regime and health programs. You'll stay energized and vital. So I think rebuilding stamina, building internal resilience. Some people call that core strength, but that's really not what we're talking about. Internal resilience is a calm that comes within your body when your cells are ready to restructure themselves and rejuvenate themselves frequently. I think what would be wise during this period of positive personal change through higher consciousness is to dump 50% of your old health maintenance habits and try to find 50% new ones to replace them. Remember, nothing's ever missing, just changes in form. So everything you're doing is perfect. But if you want to live long and have a great immune system and sustain that immune system, it might be wise to invest in energy management systems and vitality rather than use old words like recovery and rejuvenate and stress clearing. I think vitality is the word that we need to use to talk about living with spirit, to talk about being conscious, and have a body that's sort of geared up for energy strength. So when we tense our hand or tense our arm and make our muscle big, the body is in tension. But what we really want is the body to be relaxed, but the nerves to be activated, so energy is flowing through our body. So what we're going to do is in this positive personal change through higher consciousness program during this shutdown that we're going through is to shift our health effectiveness, change the process of caring for our body, do some personal coaching to relieve any anxieties that are in our body, set some body weight targets, best to do that with body mass index, which is fat to body weight. Create some energy targets. So how many hours can you stay vital and energized without a cup of coffee? And the last but not least is reduce the dependency on substitutes. And that's quite a large topic in itself. I remember a great story when I was on one of my early trips in Nepal, and I think it's relevant to this. Is in one of my early trips to Nepal, it was snowing heavily, and I took refuge in a monastery with some Buddhist monks. And unfortunately for them, their monastery, which at the time was one of the oldest in the Himalayas of Nepal, had been burnt down. And I took refuge with them in a shed. It was a dormitory, and we all slept side by side. There was about 30 of us, I think, in the room. With a smoky fire at one end, it was a really tough night. And for me, at 4,000 meters above sea level, there was a degree of altitude sickness, which the monks didn't have. But it didn't matter. We all had eaten well. We ate dal, and of course, dal is fart food. So there was a lot of flatulence in the room. And so I would call it holy flatulence rather than the normal flatulence. But the long and the short of this story is that when we woke up in the morning, we ate more dal and more rice, and it was time for me to go. I got everything ready. I got my pack ready, and it was a really, really heavy pack. And I stepped outside the front door into the snow, into the ice, and it was freezing cold. The wind was blowing, and they'd dumped about, I would say, a meter of snow on the ground for me to walk through to my next village. And I was really enthusiastic, really keen, really gung-ho about getting to the next place. At the same token, I was fearful. And I was fearful of the fact that there were no paths. The track was really obliterated through the forest, and I had to walk on some pretty steep edges. And just as I was saying goodbye, one of the monks who had a little bit of English asked me to come back in, and that the head monk, who had slept in the room at the end of the dormitory, needed me to carry a letter to the next village, which I was really proud to do, because this was me sort of paying back the generosity of the monks and letting me stay in their dormitory. What I didn't realize is that it hadn't been written yet. And at that time, the head monk, and I agreed to take the letter, took out a sheet of parchment paper, handmade paper, took out a dip pen and an ink, bottle of ink, and started to craft, I would say draw or craft a letter in the finest Tibetan scrolling and calligraphy you'd ever seen in your life. And this thing took hours. It bloody took hours, and I ended up sitting down. I ended up having another cup of coffee, which of course means you get to go to the bathroom, which means I had to take all my snow gear off. And this process, 2 hours. And so instead of leaving at what I think might have been about 8 o'clock in the morning and heading off down this trail, which is good timing for walking in the mountains, I was leaving at 10. Unbeknownst to me at this time, as I'm getting grumpy in the monastery, in the little dormitory, and I'm getting grumpy and angry and I'm frustrated, and I'm not showing any of it, of course. I'm being all very sacred and spiritual, as you do around monks. Unbeknownst to me, many porters and yaks and locals had passed by the monastery and carved me a path all the way to the next village. There was only one village and only one path to go on. So in a sense, by staying back in this, waiting for this letter, the monks had sort of saved my life. Of course, that's easy looking in hindsight, but the journey I had for the rest of that trip was about to come unstuck, because I just didn't see it that way. I saw that I was being delayed, and I saw that my schedule was being broken, and I saw that I wanted to get down the trail, and I saw that these people were taking up my time, and that's the way I perceived the situation. So I grabbed the letter, stuck it in my envelope, said blessings, thank you very much, and they gave me a tap on the head, gave me a kata around my neck, and off I walked. And it wasn't more than 50 meters from the dormitory that I started to hurry a little bit, because I was pissed that I was late. And this anger that I was carrying, this frustration that I was carrying, always ends up in our ankles, because our ankles are the part of our body that determines our values. So when we're doing something and we're not sure we really want to do it, so we're sort of split between what we want to do, what we value, and what somebody else values. When we're sort of torn between someone else's values and our own, it's very typically we'll sprain or break or hurt an ankle. Well, I've set up the story, haven't I? Because at about 300 or 400 meters away from the monastery, there was a nice path. I took it a bit wide, stepped on a piece of loose snow which is on the edge of the path, and slid down about 50 meters down what I call now a vertical slope, but it wasn't. It was just a steep, very, very steep hill, and slid down that until my ankle smashed against a rock, and my head smashed against a tree, and my shoulder smashed against something else, and I ended up a crumpled mess with my backpack down the bottom of this very steep slope. On my hands and knees, I crawled back up, crying and angry and disappointed and frustrated and really hurt. And my ankle was already starting to swell up. I crawled back up to the trail. Nobody stopped. It was all my stuff. I found a stick, a cane, and I hobbled myself all the way to the next village. Found some tape to bind up my ankle, and I lived for the next 30 days with a severely sprained ankle as I walked through the Himalayas of Nepal. That ended up causing me to be very frustrated and very disappointed in what was going on, and struggle a little bit more than I should. So I ended up with lung problems and pleurisy, and I ended up virtually with pneumonia in the hospital at the base of Mount Everest. And it was there I stayed for quite a long period of time to drain my lungs. Sometimes in our lives we get a little anger, we get a little frustration that breeds some other problem, and that breeds another problem, and we adapt to this anger by putting in place some behavioral norms like running too hard, or being dependent on yoga, or pushing too hard at the gym, or we do things based on a trigger emotion that sets a chain of other things in motion. In this case for me, it was one little thought that somebody was holding me up from my schedule, even though they were monks and all that sort of stuff, and I rolled out, and in the end I got a sprained ankle. In the end I carried a stick with a sprained ankle, got frustrated. The frustration always ends up in our lungs. That frustration ended up as pleurisy and virtually pneumonia. And yes, I had to cure the pneumonia with antibiotics, but really maybe it was my time to go back, and in retrospect it's really easy now to say that the anger I had for the monks was ridiculous, because they actually saved my bacon by holding me back. But if I didn't fall and I did walk forward and didn't question my original beliefs, my health would have suffered for the rest of my life, because the anger of being held up would never have been addressed. So sometimes we need to throw away our health program and really take a good look at what we've become attached to, what we've become dependent on meat or coffee or alcohol or detoxing or yoga practice or running or skipping or jumping or looking good or feeling great or whatever it is, as to whether what we're doing is improving or decreasing our vitality. I think this is a really important questioning process to go through, and with your coach, if it's me, great. If it's somebody else, equally great. You need to examine what you're doing on a daily basis to improve and maintain and deliver for yourself long-term vitality and stamina for life. So that's the second step here. Move your health program to a cellular health program, which addresses immunity, vitality, and resilience on the inside. This is Chris. You take good care. Bye for now.